Okay, we are going to unpack a genuinely fascinating piece of human behavior today: the psychology of men who live entirely alone, completely without a partner. We're decoding the solitary man, pulling directly from some fantastic psychological insights to figure out what's really going on beneath the surface. Now, if you're the kind of person who loves getting past those surface level assumptions to really understand the deeper personality traits driving everyday choices, well, you are in the perfect place. Let's get right into it. I want you to honestly reflect for just a second. Picture this. A man lives alone. No girlfriend, no wife, and absolutely no one waiting for him when he unlocks his front door at the end of the day. When you hear that, or when society in general encounters this lifestyle, what is the very first assumption? I mean, usually people jump straight to the negative, right? We kind of tend to think something must be fundamentally wrong or missing in his life. Okay, let's dive into this. Usually, society jumps to a pretty specific set of assumptions that this guy must be incredibly lonely. Maybe he's terrified of commitment, or maybe he's just somehow broken and hasn't managed to find the right person. But psychology, it tells a totally different story. The psychological reality is far more complex and highly intentional. Living alone isn't some default state of failure. It's an active choice that actually reflects deeper personality traits, past life experiences, and deeply held personal priorities. It's an active choice, definitely not a passive consequence. Section 1. The myth of the loner. Moving from judgment to empathy. What we are actually looking at here is a massive, unseen psychological foundation. The psychology of this lifestyle rests on 5 key pillars. It's about becoming deeply comfortable with independence, becoming fiercely protective of personal peace, preferring genuine compatibility over the mere status of being in a relationship, building an identity around purpose rather than partnership, and finally embracing what we call positive solitude. These are the gears quietly turning behind the scenes. Section 2. Independence and guarded peace. Building the solitary foundation. Let's move to the next point and see how this builds, because it's a step-by-step psychological evolution. Look, living alone requires you to handle absolutely everything yourself. You're cooking, paying the bills, making literally all the daily decisions. But over time, a profound shift happens. These men become deeply psychologically comfortable relying entirely on themselves, which leads to this ultimate realization. They might still want love, sure, but they absolutely do not depend on it to function or to feel complete. The basic need for survival and daily management has been completely decoupled from romantic partnership. And you know what that self-reliance creates? Something incredibly valuable: emotional stability. After years of building routines that just work for them, whether that's quiet evenings, the freedom to set their own schedules, or dedicated time for hobbies, these men become highly protective of their personal peace. Psychologically, people get very attached to routines that provide them with this emotional equilibrium. Because they've built the stability all on their own, anything or anyone that threatens it is going to be considered very, very carefully before being allowed in. Section 3. Patiently waiting for fit. The high standards of solitude. And this brilliantly illustrates the core idea. Some men aren't avoiding relationships, they're avoiding the wrong relationships. I want you to really let that sink in. This is where those deeper personality traits really shine through. And actually, it's the exact same psychology we see in late bloomers, people who completely start over later in life or pivot careers in their 40s or 50s. They aren't behind. They are just patiently waiting for a life path that actually fits them, rather than rushing into societal norms just to check a box. Men with higher relationship standards operate the exact same way. They are completely willing to stay single longer to ensure true compatibility and emotional health. This is the true paradigm shift. You have the reality of settling, constantly feeling misunderstood in a mediocre partnership versus emotionally healthy, peaceful solitude. For these men, the math is incredibly simple. Being alone is infinitely preferable to sharing their hard-earned peace with someone who doesn't truly understand them or naturally fit into their carefully crafted life. Section 4. Purpose and positive solitude. Love as a part, not the center. So instead of building their identity entirely around the partnership, these individuals invest massive amounts of energy into other fulfilling areas. They pour themselves into career advancement, crushing personal goals, producing creative work, or engaging in deep self-development. For late bloomers and solitary men alike, when you find profound, meaningful purpose in your own growth, the pressure to seek validation purely through romance or societal expectations, it drops dramatically. Love becomes a wonderful part of life, absolutely, but it's no longer the center of their identity. Section 5. A new psychological perspective, redefining solitude. Now, what's really interesting about this concept is how we constantly mix up two distinct things: being alone versus feeling lonely. Being alone is simply a physical situation. It's an objective fact. There is literally no one else in the room. But feeling lonely, that is a purely emotional state. The source material makes this absolutely crucial psychological distinction. A man can be entirely alone in a house without feeling even a single ounce of loneliness. In fact, a lot of these guys genuinely thrive in that environment. Look at how they use this time. They are recharging in solitude by reading, exercising, learning new skills, or simply thinking. So ask yourself, is this man truly missing out on life, or is he just expertly protecting his peace? A person's happiness does not magically disappear just because the room happens to be empty. For them, this time alone is a positive regenerative experience, definitely not a punishment.
So the crucial point is this: living alone doesn't automatically mean someone is isolated, unsuccessful, or emotionally unavailable. Psychology shows us they are making highly intentional choices. Just like the late bloomer waiting for the absolute perfect career fit, these men are patiently waiting for a relationship that truly fits their life. They're defying societal pressure simply because they value their own well-being way more than conforming to an expected timeline.
Which brings us to our final, pretty provocative thought for today. Are you judging by appearances or actually understanding the hidden psychology? The choices people make, whether it's choosing to live entirely alone or pivoting their whole life direction much later than expected, almost always have deeper psychological reasons than what just appears on the surface. Once we take the time to dig in and understand these hidden patterns, we can stop judging people based on societal assumptions and start actually understanding them. I really hope this explainer gave you a powerful new framework for looking at solitude. Keep questioning those assumptions, keep seeking to understand, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.